yeah, that was a that was unfortunate because he'd already signed with Bristol Bears, but he'd been asked by Bristol just to keep it under wraps for a little bit until they announced it. So we couldn't announce it on the podcast after all of the buzz of, because he used to be at Wimborne. James Williams, this is anyway. So the club were a bit of a buzz. He'd popped down to the club, and these players that move on to professional level, they become a little bit of a celebrity. Everybody wants to sort of say congrats and everything. But he did say on the pod, look, Bristol have said keep it under wraps a little bit. So don't mind talking about it. And we've got, you might have realised we run the podcast in the same, or it's close to the same format as a game of rugby does. So we have a warm up, then we have a first half, halftime announcement, second half, and then just a cool down over what's happened. But we've got laws the same as rugby's got laws, and one of our laws is, apart from respect being the respect to everybody is the first law, but one of our laws is if there's anything you don't want to talk about, we don't talk about it, because that's part of respect and that's part of what it's all about. So when he said, look, we can't, if you don't mind, just no problems, we won't talk about it. And it was the very next day, before we'd even published the podcast from him, that Bristol put out on all their social media that they'd officially signed him. So, which was, so I just had to record a little bit before the podcast just to sort of say, congrats to him and all the rest. So, but no, he was really good to chat to. I mean, everybody we've had's been great to chat to, and it's just we're slowly getting somewhere with getting interesting guests on. So, and yeah, Mike Ford, probably the biggest guest we've had so far because of the fact that he's been there and done it all. It was really good to chat with him.
Well, it's good to have you. I think I was intrigued mostly by the mindset issue. So we can start there. We can start anywhere. There's the way I've done my previous podcast is there's no because once you get going, you kind of free flow, and before you know it, 30-40 minutes is gone. So you don't have to have a certain topic or agenda. You can just free ball it. And the great thing about, I'll give you, this is what I wrote down yesterday. So
okay,
there's plenty of stuff. There's in the world of rugby to talk about.
That's exactly what it is. That's why it's such a great topic for anybody, because it doesn't matter what level you're at with rugby. It just doesn't. There's lessons, there's values, there's skills, there's things that you can use personally, all the rest, which is why I've always been passionate about rugby anyway, which I understand you've been anyway. It really became something for me when my youngest lad got into rugby. I think he was probably about 11 years old when he moved up to senior school, because things started making sense, certainly to him. He really understood rugby and the values of rugby. And him and I just kind of, to help him more integrate with his peers, we just started talking about rugby like it was a way of life. And it really helped him, really helped me, especially in my business, because we do construction project management. My job solely is bringing together teams of people to achieve something for clients, but not just for clients, for the team themselves, for us, for whoever's involved in it. And we very much run our company in that same ethos that you would have a rugby team. This is what we've got to achieve. We need everybody to be engaged in this, everybody to bring their best to it. We'll put our best into it as well, and hopefully we'll achieve something great.
It's interesting you say that. The earliest memory around 10 or 11, it was the same for me, and I think it's strange that it's taken now for a lot of people to start to recognize it. Obviously, that there was that clip of that that went viral of the young lad giving the speech to the other lad.
The two lads with the coach there, yeah.
And I think obviously TikTok wasn't around when I started playing, but it was around the same age, 10 or 11, you know, high school, around that kind of age. And then obviously you find a local club, you find, you know, my local club was Devizes, where I grew up. And you know, I didn't grow up in Bournemouth, but I grew up back in Wiltshire and Devizes, and then obviously started playing there. And it is around that age, 10 or 11, where you're starting to figure things out. And if you're playing rugby at the same time, it just so happens that it's like an extra buffer. It's like an extra, you know, you could write an essay about how it explains everything and how it helps, because it just, you know, words almost can't explain.
Well, I mean, I wrote a book on it just through writing down notes constantly to help me and my son communicate, help him, you know, integrate. It was helping us as a family. It was helping business. It was really helping, because you just had that understanding of, actually, you've got your position, you've got to do well at your position, work hard at your position, and make sure that you've got the back of everybody else in the team. Because if you have the back of everybody else in the team, they'll have your back at the same time, because nobody performs better than when someone says, look, don't worry about it, I'm here with you. This isn't my position, but I'll help you, the same as you would on a rugby pitch. You know what I mean? And that just creates an ethos and a culture around in any team, whether it's business, whether it's at home, whether it's social, whether it's on a rugby pitch, or other sports do the same, but rugby's my passion, and it fulfills it so well that you just can't help but go, you know what? If we all act a little bit more like rugby players, then life's got to be easier.
It's an incredibly important value to learn at an early age. You know, I was obviously rugby is my main sport, but I've always maintained that to learn other sports as well, and to keep and to research and to keep track of what's going on in and around the world of sport is a good way to stay up to date, you know, in line with sport, because you can only know what's going on as an athlete, as a coach as well. When I started doing my coaching badges, you know, so as a coach, you know, if you're only in one direction, say as a sport, that's quite narrow-minded. So, you know, you've got to be out there, you've got to be looking at, you know, the way other coaches coach, other players play, you know, you've got to look, and you've got to be open-minded, you know, you've got to be willing to try different things, and at an early age as well, to be willing to think that way. It's not a hard thing to do, but it's a thing that you will take for the rest of your life. Let's just say that, you know, it's a very important thing.
I was listening to something this morning on admiring people. When you look at people who you admire, the core principle of admiring somebody is wanting to imitate them, or in some way, as in, if they've got values that you that draw you to them, to admire them in the first place, those values are values that you clearly want yourself. It's like a hunger to be, you know, to be like that person. And when it comes to leadership, especially, and again, all sports have this, but rugby is rugby's my passion, so I've gone down this route anyway. But when you look at leaders on a rugby pitch, they don't necessarily tell people what to do. You know, look at Martin Johnson, who is one of the greatest leaders. We can just
he did it in a way.
Yeah. People followed him, admired him, wanted to be like him, not because he said, follow me, because leaders don't say, follow me. They don't say, be like me. They just They just walk ahead, being the best that they can be, and people will follow them. And in following them, they try to be like them. They try to emulate them. And naturally, they become leaders themselves. They take on everything that person that they admire has to themselves as a value, as an ethos, and then they try and better it again at the same time. And you get that in team sports, all team sports. But yeah, in rugby, if you look at the leaders that are on the pitch, everybody admires them. Everyone wants to be like them, and you can't help but become like them as a leader yourself.
Are people born leaders, or are people coached into leaders? Because that's an age-old question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so personally,
yeah,
I am not a confident person, and naturally, not at all. And would I say I was a natural leader? No. Would I say I'm a leader? Probably not. I don't go out of my way to lead or be anything. I had to learn myself at quite a late age that if I wanted to be confident, I had to make myself confident. I wasn't naturally confident, and I didn't expect anybody to follow me. I looked at other people and admired other people, and yeah, perhaps wanted to be like other people, but didn't have the ability in myself as a youngster, especially when I was at school, quite shy. I didn't want to put myself forward for anything, so I didn't get too involved in team sports when I was at school, mainly for the fear of failure or ridicule or whatever. So when I started to get sort of into my probably late teens, early 20s, I realized that actually if I was going to achieve anything, I had to start being a bit more confident myself. And that relied on me taking responsibility for the way I felt in certain circumstances, and not worrying about what everybody else thinks. There's people that don't like me. There's people that do like me. The ones that like me know me. The ones that don't like me don't know me, and probably don't want to get to know me. It's entirely it's entirely up to them. I'm not worried about it. But when I was younger, I didn't want to be a leader. I just wanted to be in the background and keep my head down.
Yeah.
And now that's not changed. I don't want to be a leader, but what I want to do is stand up and say, look, everybody, this is what I feel. This is especially on the rugby. This is why we started the podcast, and why, I was writing my book. I was just writing notes down for my own benefit. I had a notebook and I just write stuff in all day, every day. So it kind of wrote itself. But it was my other half that said to me, look, if you're going to write, you've got it all there, publish it. It's great. It's great knowledge. It's not my knowledge. It's just rugby knowledge, other people's knowledge. I've just brought it all together, and it made complete sense to me. So I thought, actually, if I can do that and one person reads it and goes, actually, this is helping me at work, or it's helping me with my family, or it's helping me communicate with my son or daughter, or it's helping me help my son and daughter or my family or my friends or whatever, then it's just got to be out there, not for my benefit. And I don't do the podcast for my benefit. I do the podcast because I think if anybody is struggling at all, but they know rugby, or they know football or netball or anything. I mean, even you say boxing might be a sport, but a boxer doesn't sit on the corner on his own. A boxer sits with his team. They're all there to help. So if anybody's got any involvement in any sport, and they don't have to play, even if they just enjoy the sport, because there's plenty of sports people out there that just are spectators. If you watch a game of rugby at the weekend, you can do one or two things with it. You can either just enjoy it and go, yeah, that was a great game of rugby, or that was a bad game of rugby. Or you can go, actually, there's so many lessons in that for me for this coming week. Such and such was supporting such and such, or, the team were on the back foot and they all rallied and they all, and they all managed to get over the line. So I just thought, actually, if I'm going to do anything, I'm not a leader. I'm not particularly, I'm not naturally confident, but I've made myself do something because I think it will help other people. So I don't think that's a natural thing at all. Certainly not for me. So I think you can make leaders. Leaders come from circumstances rather than just being born into it, I think. That's not to say some people aren't born with more confidence than others. Some people just are.
It's very, very well explained. I think having having experienced it on the pitch, obviously I would have looked at it a little bit differently, because obviously there would have been some experiences where you naturally have to step in, and I've been there myself. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to go, okay, it's me. And sometimes because rugby is one of those games where even if you are a little bit of a shy player, you might get a circumstance or a scenario where that will get taken out of you straight away. And I remember when I was playing in Bath for Oldfield Rugby Club, and I think I had 3 games on the bounce that I just got absolutely bullied, and the rest of the team weren't turning up, and it was I remember feeling, and I was working as well. I just started my job at Fitness First, so I was deciding whether or not to pursue my career as a PT and then play at the same time. And I remember feeling like the world's against Nathan. The world is just all on me. And sometimes you'll have those moments. Sometimes you'll just have like, the rugby doesn't like me today. And you've got to step up, and you've whether it's taking a kick at goal, or whether it's stepping in, and or just whatever it is, it's just little things. But some people will, not. Some people will shy away. They'll hang on the wing all 78 minutes, and they'll not speak to you. And it's about, my hero growing up was Johnny Wilkinson, and obviously not for the glory moment, just because that was my first memory watching him drop the goal, and his mentality as a player. I was lucky enough to meet him as well, and I just think there's very few people that come close to him as a player mentally, so I think that was always what I was trying to emulate on the pitch, because what he always said and tried to put out to, even if it was semi-pro, down at Richmond, or or Sunday rugby, or even under 15s, it was just, it was the mentality and the attitude. That's where he got to another level, and I think that's where a lot of people forget.
And he had to really, I completely feel what you're saying with regards to sometimes you feel like rugby's against you, or when you're on the pitch. A lot of people would give up in a situation where they think that there's nothing they can do. But to keep going, and you read Johnny Wilkinson's autobiography, the amount of times he said that he was, he was crying, he was vomiting before matches, on the way to matches, he was nervous, anxious, all the rest of it. I did, it's kind of what set me down the route I'm trying to go at the moment. I was fortunate enough to receive some executive coaching from a very experienced and qualified psychologist, just for a company I'd been working for years and years ago. And I did quite a number of sessions, and we talked about obviously the usual things of, how are you feeling? Are you feeling, or are you communicating from a green, or are you communicating from a red, or and all of the things that are involved in how to communicate to somebody without causing a negative response and all sorts. But I talked about confidence and how I'm not naturally, I don't feel like a naturally confident person. But I kind of thought back to a time when I think I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my gran had taken me on holiday to Florida. First time I've been abroad and all the rest of it. It was about my parents, and she'd taken a few of, the grandkids. She was just treating them all as she could to a holiday. So she took a few of me and my cousins out. And we went to a water park, and there was a diving board, and I loved diving when I was a kid. I was, I'm not particularly athletic, but I could, I was athletic enough, and I could dive. And they had like a big diving board, is it 30 meter or something, or 10 meter, something like that, 10-meter diving board or whatever it is, hardboard, at this water park. And I thought, brilliant, I can do this. So I walked up to the top and stood on the edge and looked down, and it was 10 times higher than it was when I was looking from the ground up. And all of a sudden I was in that position where I was absolutely crapping myself, thinking, this is ridiculous. But at that point, and this is what the same feeling you get when you're on the rugby pitch, especially when you start playing rugby and full contact rugby. At that point, I had a choice of either going back down the steps or jumping off the board. And every fiber in me was saying, don't jump off this board. You'd be a moron to jump off this board. It's far too high. Get back down the steps. But the voice inside me was saying, you can't. If you go back down the steps, you've lost. You just have. You've got to go off the edge of this board. So I went off the edge of this board. I survived, no problems. But that feeling I've experienced a number of times, in whether it's conflict at work or generally or whatever, but also on the rugby pitch, when you're playing rugby and you step on the pitch, like you were saying, there's some big blokes at the other side of you. If you're a bloke playing, obviously, and there's some big women on the other side if you're a woman playing. But sometimes you've got the biggest guy in the world running at you, and you have to put yourself in the way, and you've got a choice to step out of the way and let them run past if you want to, or you've got to put your body in the way and know you're going to get hurt, know that the consequences could be not in your favor. But what are you going to do otherwise? You're going to just walk off the pitch and not play again? You're going to give up? And do you then give up the rest of your life every time you come up against something that's a bit difficult? So to be in a position like Johnny Wilkinson before a game could have just said, I don't want to play. Like yourself, when you've been playing rugby and you've gone, you know what, actually, this is ridiculous. I'm up against, this is the worst situation. I could just give up on this one. You don't have to be on the pitch. But it's you that decided to stay there. It's you that decided to put yourself in the way of the lot forward coming at you at what seems to be
I'm probably paying for it now because my body's a mess.
maybe, but mentally, what did you get from that? Do you know what I mean? The same as the times I've been in places where I just think, I just don't want to be in this situation. I don't like it. I'm not into confrontation at all. But you find yourself in these places and you just think to yourself, well, what am I going to do? Am I just going to walk away and give up? Or am I going to stand up and just go, you know what, I might not like it, but if I give up, it's going to be worse for me. And rugby, I think, gives people that ability to show them that they can achieve more than they ever thought they could if they just go, you know what, the other team might be a big bad team and we might lose. But
do you think that will go away eventually at some point, though? The aggressiveness of rugby, the confrontation of it, because we hear it every new season. We hear the topic of the tackles, the way to tackle, the concussion conversation, the new laws. I mean, every year we get a new conversation about it.
I think if you, how would I say, life's tough. It really is tough. Everybody wishes life was easy, and some people got it easier than others. But life's tough. Even if you're living, you might have a luxury apartment looking over the sea, beautiful wife, gorgeous kids, a dog, a good job, you're enjoying yourself, you're healthy, it's fantastic, and you think life's easy. But an illness could come along and turn your life upside down.
Well, yeah.
Or or something could catch. Anything can happen. I don't know, wishing anything bad on anybody at all, but no matter how good your life is, life's pretty tough, and it's going to throw stuff at you. And if rugby's taught me anything at all, it's that in all these laws that they're bringing in and changing to try and make it safer, which is a good thing, it doesn't get any easier. No. Because you go back to the 80s and 90s and you watch them playing, and okay, there was no real safety involved, but the guys that were coming in weren't the monsters that they are today.
No, they're skinnier, if anything. Yeah,
absolute athletes today, and they're built for one purpose and one purpose only. Whereas years gone by, it was more just normal people, because it was amateur game. League was professional, and they are, always have been proper athletes. So rugby's not going to be, and if it does become a sport where there's no aggression and no tackling and it's a non-contact sport, then it won't be the sport it is today. But today, rugby the hits are harder, the aggression's greater, the guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. Everything about rugby today is tougher than it was back in the 80s, even with all the safety protocols and laws that are put in place. But everyone's getting better at it. So you're talking about a situation where you go with life. If you don't learn when you're younger that life's tough, but if you work hard, you can get better at it. It doesn't get easier. You're better at it, and it becomes easier because of that, not because it's easy, just because you're putting some effort into trying to get better. Like a rugby player on a rugby pitch, you can be a club and you can be getting some funding in from sponsors, and the sponsors want you to perform well because they want their particular part that they're trying to advertise to be seen, and seen in a positive light. There's pressure on the rugby players to go out and perform. But in rugby, they do everything to make sure that the rugby players have got what they need. They've got the support they need. They're being looked after because they're the most important element. Whereas in the construction industry, the labour doesn't seem to be the most important element. But as far as we're concerned, when we run our projects, we need for our contractors and their labour to have everything they need to do a good job. Because if they can do a good job, they do it well and they're happy. And when you're happy doing something, you always do it better than if you're stressed at doing something. And I've been in that situation. I've been on building sites when I've been having pressure from, whether it's, I've been self-employed for forever and ever now. But
I think people in general just are more open to talking to people about stuff now, because you look at the circumstances. We had almost 2-3 years of COVID, and fair to say a mess. There's no other word for it. And I think people are I don't think people know anymore. I think people are just a bit confused, a bit lost. Some people are obviously, don't have a choice. They have jobs that they have to go to. Some people don't. Some people, the world doesn't make as much sense as it did. Well, it never really did make sense, but I think it's not getting. If you're being cynical, you could easily go, well, here's just a bunch of examples. Of course, you're going to have a bad day today. Of course, you're going to, but if you're the optimist, then as you've said, a good squad, a good bunch of people, then anything's possible. And I think that's why mindset and the values that come from a sport like rugby, are so important, because they teach you discipline, respect, just all the things that we haven't really seen for the last few years. It's fair to say, I mean, obviously it's quite a broad statement, but and I think we're slowly seeing them come back a little bit, the odd thing there.
As I can only speak as a bloke, and I know everyone's different, even men, women, whatever gender you identify with, whoever you are, old, young, everyone's got a degree of their own internal self. And I don't know if I'll be able to find this. So Joe Marler's speaking out at rugby now about mental health, which is great, because rugby, like very much like the construction industry, has always been one of big and tough. Don't show your emotions. You've got to muscle through and all the rest of it. And you look at Joe Marler and you just think, he's a monster of the game, and for him to stand up and say, actually, this is it. This is how I feel, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Okay, so this image I found, I don't know whether this is going to work because I'm not very good on this. This image I found years ago, and I identified with this, and I know people that do. And I think this is kind of what Joe Marler's trying to say. I don't know whether that works.
Yeah, I saw that on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So
I see people on building sites and at rugby all day, every day, and I see that face. No true idea as to what's going on actually inside them until you communicate with them, until you start to talk to them and learn the person you are. I've identified with that when I was younger. I probably still do feel that way at times, because I'm not a confrontational person, but to stand in a group of people, even at a rugby club, and put on a happy face and have a laugh with everybody, but feel that way inside, you don't know, no matter who you are. So if you can spend time getting to know somebody, then, like you said, people are probably a bit more open to talking now, because there's more people like Joe Marler talking about mental health and about their struggles with their mental health. But I personally feel that if you can spend time with people and get to know them so that they feel comfortable with you in a situation enough to talk to you, you'll never ever truly see it unless they come forward to you. But you've just got to put people in a situation where they're comfortable enough to come and talk to you about stuff, and that takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage from people. A lot of bravery and courage.
I think for me, that's why my LinkedIn network it's probably like 40 or 50% rugby, because and that's why grassroots rugby, I will bang on about it until the day I die, because it's so important. Because that picture you showed me, there were so many times when not just when I was a kid or a teenager, because obviously rugby is still part of me now. I'm still doing my coaching. I tried playing this year, but realized that I am 28 and I think my legs were definitely gone. So the last training session, even though that hunger will always be with you and you will still always put on the boots and think, maybe a little run around. But when I was growing up, I also had so I have epilepsy. So having that, and playing rugby as a kid, which means there's a whole lot of baggage that comes with that. I don't drink. I take medication every day. So you throw that into the culture and the world of rugby as a young kid growing up, that picture right there, I definitely related to that a lot of times, and it was very hard to find a club and friends that I could go, this is me. Can you understand me? Because sometimes I just found clubs that I just went, sometimes I didn't, go all in and make friends because I wasn't there long enough. Sometimes because of my baggage. So luckily the club in Bournemouth, I've been there 10 years now. I'm very close with them, very close connection. So because when you have that, it's another thing to add on to, and you've got to go, well, yeah, I can play with you. It doesn't stop me from playing, and not at all. But you've got to understand that I come with all this stuff, and if you're a coach or anything, you've got to go, oh, it's a massive thing to understand.
Did you talk to the club when you?
Yeah.
You did. So they knew, and your teammates.
Yeah. But again, not everyone is you're asking the world to understand this whole thing. And it's just, I've taken that everywhere I've gone with me.
When I was at school, there was a lad in my year group, so senior school, fantastic rugby player, really, really good rugby player. And we used to do, obviously, sports at school, and he never did swimming, ever. And certain sports he didn't partake in, but rugby he was out and out probably the best. No, not probably. He was the best rugby player in school. Just was. He was a mountain of a guy as well. But never opened up to anybody when asked if he was going, why he didn't have to do swimming. So, as kids, everybody wants to know why you're not partaking in certain things. And at the time, I think he was playing for Oxfordshire, I think, doing really well. And it wasn't until I left school, I happened to get to know his dad through where I was working. He was a friend of one of my old bosses. And it wasn't until after school that I learned that he had epilepsy. And he never told a soul at school, not a dicky bird. And when he was really, I know when he was really pushed by some guys at school that, why are you not doing this and that? I've got something, a condition that means I can't do, and that was it. And he kept it very, very quiet. I don't know whether he even said to the rugby, the clubs and that he had a condition. He may well have done, but he never shared it at school. But then back in those days, I'm talking a long time ago, nobody shared anything.
It was also seen differently. I mean, my dad suffers from it. So when he was, again, back in the day, it was looked at completely differently. And I've been very fortunate enough to have coaches, teachers who have been very understanding and very helpful. And I don't think I would have had that same period of time. I may not have done well academically as such, but the one thing that was a constant was the rugby pitch, because it still baffles me today, because you would think running at people at full pelt content is not something you would advise for somebody who has epilepsy. But they teach you the technique, they teach you how to do it properly, safely. And my mum, what was fierce, she was like, right, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right, and you're going to have the best people around you. And she took me to all the games. I grew up, you know, single mum, and she was religious about it. So, you know, I don't think I would have hit without her. So,
Oh, that's cool.
you know, yeah, it's
something that and this really helped my youngest, is the discipline around rugby and other team sports. You hear so many stories of, you know, not just people that you know that have got illnesses or conditions, but people that are struggling mentally or with their home lives. They could go one of two ways, and the discipline that's taught, especially with rugby, just grounds you to a point where you stop yourself and go, actually, if I lose control here, I'm going to get hurt. I have to be. And the biggest thing about control is understanding that the only thing you have in control of control over in your life is yourself. You got no control over anything else that happens around you. You can influence things that happen around you. But you got no actual control over anything but yourself. And if you lose your control, effectively losing your control is giving that over to somebody else to manipulate you or influence you to be in a position where you don't want to be. It really is a situation where if you've got complete control over yourself, and that comes through the discipline and the training and the hard work that you put into anything, you're going to be safer. And that's what I tried to teach my eldest. Is he plays football, but he's a goalkeeper.
The little smile.
he does play, but he's a goalkeeper, and he's I've never known anybody more dedicated to their craft than he is. His self-motivation is second to none, and he will be fantastic at what he does because of that. My youngest, he just needed to have that control over himself because he's a bit of a live wire. And rugby really helped him with that understanding that actually if he controls himself, has self-discipline and self-control, he's going to not get hurt. He's going to do better at everything he does. But talking about the help that rugby gives you mentally, the dopamine system that we've all got inside us is the reward system that we get, the good feelings from when we do something positive in life. It helps, it motivates us, it drives us on, but it gives us physical and mental growth because of the feelings, and that can come from anything that you're doing positively or taking steps towards positively. So if you've got anything in your life that you think, actually, I want to achieve that, achieving it isn't what sets the dopamine system into play, if you like. Traveling towards it, taking positive steps towards it is when the dopamine system kicks in, and you get those positive feelings that motivate you to go and do it more. And I've looked a lot of and read a lot of psychology over the dopamine system, and I can't help but keep coming back to rugby when, if you're standing there and you're not doing anything, you're in a position where you're not really benefiting yourself or anybody. But when you see somebody that gets the ball and goes forward with the ball, so they're making gains, they might have gone over the gain line, they might have broken through a tackle and tearing down the pitch. The positive energy that they're getting from the dopamine system isn't just them. The whole stadium erupts. And I know you'll have been to watch rugby games on the big stage. I know I have. And this isn't just rugby, but the feeling, the positive feelings you get when your team is on the front foot, making some ground, it spreads around everybody. It's an infectious thing. And if you personally are doing something positive, it's going to benefit you. But it's not just going to benefit you, it's going to benefit every one of your supporters, whether that's boyfriends, girlfriends, kids, wives, husbands, parents, grandparents, friends. Everybody feels good when somebody that they care about is doing something positive in their life. It just does. And I look at my two sons, and I just think, actually, if I want for them to do something productive and have a good life, I've got to go and do something that makes them feel from me, perhaps first, actually, that feels great. The fact that, dad's done that, or their uncle's done this, or a friend of theirs has done that, and that will spur them on to go and do something as well. That will only benefit them mentally and physically, because the two systems go, physical and mental side of your body go hand in hand. You do physical exercise and your brain grows, because I think it's 2% of your body mass is your brain, yet it takes up 20% of your energy. So it's firing all the time, and if you haven't got energy, your brain's not going to be operating. It just isn't.
I think if you talk about infectious, I remember very vividly the year 2013. That season for me was, I think I moved to Bournemouth 2012. Started playing for Oaks that year into 2013. And I mean, they were still using old shirts back then, and hadn't even started taking photos for the club. It was a very different club, and I remember it was the same year as the Lions tour, and I just remember that year being so infectious in terms of rugby. And I remember getting up early to watch all the and what a summer it was of rugby. And I still watch it now. I still have the DVDs on my shelf of the behind the scenes of what they did, the Lions Raw DVD, and also the games, because even though there's been other Lions tour, that was just the best. It was the best crop of players. It was the best type of rugby we've seen. And also, I had just started playing rugby at a new club, and it was like, this is good. This is, you get that dopamine hit you just talked about. And yeah, that was a good summer.
Yeah, it is like that. It is. And get out there and play any sport. If you're sitting around at home, just get out and play some sport.
Well, it doesn't have to be rugby. I mean, that was the 2012 Olympics before that, and I mean, we all remember what that was like.
Or join a walking group, or or a tennis club, or just do something physical that involves you getting out and achieving something, because that's where life is when you're doing something positive. You get the reward from it, but you don't. It's not just you that gets the reward. Everyone gets the reward, which is why you've got a Lions DVD on your bookshelf. You would do, because everyone's benefiting from some positive action. I love it. I can't get enough of it. Just can't.
So we got 2 minutes left.
Okay.
What would be your message to anyone who has managed to stay throughout all of this after I've edited it?
A message to anybody. I love rugby, and as far as I'm concerned, if you enjoy rugby, you've got so many skills, values, which you can better your own life with. You can enjoy it as a spectator. Anybody can enjoy it as a spectator, or as a player, or as a coach, or as a manager, or just get involved in it. But I'm not talking just about rugby. Rugby's my sport. Rugby's your sport. Get out there and do something. My message would be, get off your ass and go and do something positive. Full stop.
Love it. Should be I got about a minute left, and hopefully this should all be done and edited. Well, that will give me something to do today. and thanks for coming on, Jim.
No worries, it's been a pleasure. Been
Awesome.
lovely to talk to you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, mate.
Will do. Thank you.